guitar people, welcome to Have Guitar Will Travel, presented by Vintage Guitar Magazine, with your host, me, James Patrick Regan, otherwise known as Jimmy from the Deadlies. And today I'm speaking with an amazing guitarist, bassist, and multi-instrumentalist, LuisCarlosMaldonado. And in our conversation, we discussed the obligatory COVID stories, the hand Mike Varney played in his career early on, his new bandmate and foreigner, Jeff Pilson, growing up in Tucson, Arizona, and Southern California, and the role his brother played in his music career. His early influences, including progressive rock greats like UK, Laura Nyro, and King Crimson. We talk about Luis's early gear, a high-watt head and a Marshall cab, and black Gibson SGs. We talk about Luis's first vintage purchase, an original Fender 59 Bassman, and we discuss his early recording experiences. We talk about Luis's move to Northern California and what brought about that move, and playing in Dean Del Rey's band. We talk about playing and working with Michael Schenker on his solo record for Shrapnel Records, and touring and working with UFO and Phil Mogg. Then Luis talks about working with John Waite for 8 years and contrasts that with working with Phil Mogg from UFO. Then Luis discusses how he was introduced to Pat and the band Train, and how he made the transition to joining his brother in that band. Latest on the band front, we discuss his entrance into the band Foreigner and what it's like working with Mick Jones and the gear he's bringing on the road, and his relationship with Gibson. We spend a time talking about pedals, which Luis uses very sparingly, and the pedals that he's very excited about. Finally, we talk about Luis's home life and the importance of family. You can find out more about Luis at his website, luisguitar.com. That's LuisGuitar.com. Please like, comment, and most of all, share this podcast. I'd really appreciate it. And please support Vintage Guitar Magazine and all the wonderful things they do for us guitar players, because they do so many wonderful things for us guitar players. Here's Luis.
What's happening, man?
How are you, Luis?
Well, good. Good. I am good. How about you?
I'm good. It's a good start that you're good.
Well, today I'm good. Well, no, it's actually, I'll be honest with you, just on a side note, it's been kind of an interesting couple of weeks. We've had some really weird shit, like my mother-in-law's house burned down.
Oh, no.
Yeah, this was just last week. Her house burned down completely.
Wow.
And so we've had to deal with getting her a toothbrush and a phone and clothes. She had no clothes. And,
of course.
And aside from all this stuff, like the memories of Luciano's stuff is all gone. And but so that was interesting enough. And then, 2 days ago, our one of our beloved pets passed away, and we're like, oh shit.
No.
So it's been an interesting couple of weeks. I mean, there's more, but we'll leave it at that, as those are those are the greatest hits. Those are the greatest hits.
Where did your mother-in-law live?
Idlewild. Do you know where Idlewild is?
It's Southern California, like in the valley?
It's okay. So if you're driving out to Palm Springs on the 10.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're driving out to the half hour that you would spend to get to Palm Springs near arriving it, you would go up the hill in Banning, and up the hill is Idlewild. So it's like, it's the other Big Bear.
Okay.
So, it's up there. It's a really cool place. It's beautiful. But yeah, it's wild. It's so cool that I can remember like your band and your vibe and you from all you needed to say was that show in Napa, and it all kind of came back to me. I was like, and I felt like, oh yeah, we're brothers,
We are brothers. Damn it.
So yeah, it's cool, man. It's so cool. Now, so besides playing these shows, I mean, you're writing for Vintage Guitar, and you're doing the podcast. Fill me in on what else has been going on, and how was your COVID year, man? It must have been crazy.
You know what? It was crazy. I had to get a real job, but I still managed to do gigs. Because up here in Northern California, there were places that were still doing, as long as you were solo, you could, they would, and you wore a mask when you walked in. They were cool. They let you play. And when I say Northern California, I don't mean like San Francisco. I mean like Yuba City and, and Marysville and Ukiah.
The other Northern California. Right.
Exactly. The more, let's say, Republican California.
Dude, see, I used to live in Marin. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I lived in Marin, and I lived in the Bay Area for a long time before I came back down to Los Angeles, which was 2003-ish or something like that.
Okay.
Right. So I was there throughout the whole 90s, and I thought it was one of the best places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But, sadly, I got affected like everybody else there in the culture of the arts and music and this and that made that city so special when Willie Brown said, let's bring in the Gap and tech.
Yeah.
And I'm all for tech. Look, I'll tell you, I love tech. I like the fact that when I could tour and I could see my daughter's face on FaceTime.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and I like the fact that during this crazy pandemic, they came out with a vaccine in record time, and, we have vaccines. And it's not the 60s or 50s where it's like, oh, we should wait 2 years. It's like, no, we're so far advanced in technology. It's about the right time. I mean, I felt like it took them a little longer than they should have, but they had all the foundations for making it before it even happened. So
sure.
It sounded right. So I do like technology that it can step in at a moment's notice and it relatively, expedite things when they need to. So that is cool. But the one thing I don't like about technology is, all the obvious shit, the isolation that self-isolation when people stuck on their phones at dinner, or our whole city like San Francisco completely, being destroyed of its infrastructure and culture because, Toast recorders can't even be around anymore because they wanted to sell it to Alta Vista or Yahoo or whatever it was at that time. You know what I mean? So, so it the good and the bad, all that shit. So
exactly.
Yeah, wild. So
where in Marin did you live?
I lived in Novato.
Oh,
you know where Novato is?
Of course I know where Novato is.
Yeah, so I lived in Novato, and I liked it. It wasn't right in the city. When I first moved up there, I was in the city for like a few months before I was like, I don't want to be in a house with 8 other people. So, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean.
I've done that before. I'm like, nah, that's not for me.
When you were living in Novato, you're hanging out with Eric Martin and all the other Novato people?
No, I wasn't. Interestingly enough, I was not hanging out with Eric Martin, but I was. Mike Varney was one of the first people that I made a connection with.
Sure.
Like about maybe 2 to 3 months after I moved to Novato.
Okay.
He, it's an interesting story because I called my mom and she's like, hey, there's this guy, Mike Varney, trying to find you. And, I didn't know what to do. So here's his phone number. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I called and I didn't know he lived in Nevada. I just said, oh, okay, let me see who this dude, I knew who he was.
Sure.
So I wasn't ignorant of that. So I was like, oh, cool. Let me call him. And, at that time I didn't make a lot of friends for whatever reason. It was just, I was having a hard time kind of getting integrated into the whatever, not even a scene, but just with people. And so I was like, man, I just want to meet people. And so I called, I go, hey, Mike, my name's Luis Maldonado. I got your number. You called my folks' house, and you hear this, hey, what's going on here? And,
that was a good impersonation right there.
Yeah. And so he goes, hey, yeah. So I'm like, hey, he goes, where are you at? I go, I'm up in Marin. He goes, really? Where are you? I go, I'm in Novato. He goes, get out of here. I live in Novato. And I'm like, he goes, where do you do it right now? I go, I'm working at a party store. Dude, long story, but I couldn't find any real work when I first moved up there. So I was like, I got to make money. So, and I was like, I was just 20 or something like that. I was 20 years old. Right. And so I just started working at a party store, and then he shows up, like, he goes, I'll be over. I don't know, but it was like within half an hour he shows up and he's like, hey man, how's it going? And we met and started talking. We went out to dinner, and honestly, we became friends after that. And
great.
And shortly thereafter, we started, he started calling me. He's like, would you be into like doing some background vocals for this record? I'm like, sure. Hey, would you do rhythm guitar for this record? Sure. And he kind of I met a lot of great people through him.
Oh yeah, of course.
He kind of, to be honest, anyone in the industry, he was probably the most responsible for me building and getting integrated to this industry, building my career and really finding my, kind of my way around. I mean, even to just meeting people as friends and then from friends, because it's all, how it is, dude. This is all connected. We all circle around to the same spots. I mean, look, dude, you and I, it's like, oh my God, yes, I know you. You know what I mean? You somehow end up doing something later with people that have been in industry for a long time. So, but he was definitely probably the most responsible person for kind of like, just by nature of like, hanging with him and doing sessions for him and then recording for him and then later on meeting people through him. So, he's a very good friend. He's still a very good friend. I still stay in touch with him.
Oh, good.
So Mike Varney,
Yeah, I've known Mike for almost 40 years.
Oh, get out.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was a kid, Mike was teaching all my friends guitar lessons when I was a kid. And I saw him, and he used to play in a punk band, and I saw him when he was...
The Nuns, right?
The Nuns, yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw him in that. I saw him in Rock Justice.
Oh, get out. So I don't know. Did James tell you I'm with Foreigner now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I joke, not joke, but like sometimes I mention like, I remember when I first started rehearsing with these guys, I'd send Jeff Pilson a text. I'm like, hey man, are we doing any songs from Rock Justice? And he would just go, what? How do you know that? Like,
that's great. Yeah. So there's that. I mean, there's another guy that Mike helped a tremendous amount was Jeff Pilson. Yeah.
I was just at his house last night.
Yeah. And everything I hear, because Jeff is producing, right? He as well as
he produces a lot, man. That guy's like nonstop.
Yeah,
it's amazing how much stuff he has going on. It's really something else.
And everything I've heard that he's done has just been like world class, like just epic.
Yeah, man. I mean, the guy. I mean, he's obviously not only put the time, but he's an extremely talented musician. I mean, he knows his stuff.
Oh, yes,
the guy knows. Well, I mean, dude, you know how it is. You meet people and. And I'm saying nothing by this except that, in this industry, you could be a person that plays primarily by ear, right?
Oh, yeah.
And not know how to read a note of music and not know a lot of theory, but you can, I mean, some of our guitar heroes are that, know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's totally cool. But he not only has that, but he also has the technical knowledge and the theory no, he's extremely talented and, God damn, what a great bassist, man. Well, actually, let me take that back. Let me say a different word because he's not a bass player. He's a great musician.
Sure.
So
as you are.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So did you grow up in Southern California?
I grew up in Southern California. Lived in when I was a kid. I lived in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
And I lived there for a good while until, I don't know, what was I, 13, 14, maybe a little older. We moved to Southern California. And, I had a couple of older brothers and a younger brother. So, everyone was a musician. Everybody played. Everybody had their specialty, right?
Yeah.
And my older brother and I, were in bands a lot. And so when we came to Southern California, we were like, let's find all the musicians. Well, we ended up in San Diego. There was a little bit of a scene, but it wasn't at that time in the 80s. You know what I mean? It wasn't like LA. So, when he started driving, we would make these trips quite often. And, my parents not knowing at the time, we would head out to the Sunset Strip or, you know what I mean? And we had our own band and we had played the Sunset Strip and all that, but man, what a scene. And we're like, yeah, cool. We want to get, the whole dream was you want to make a band, you want to get signed, you want to go on tour. And that's how kind of narrow-minded the mentality was at that time. We got to be a signed band, but
yeah, we're kids. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
You weren't thinking.
You weren't thinking about. You were thinking about songs, but not in the way that songs are really supposed to be thought of, or productions are really supposed to be thought of. You just thought, I want to sound like AC/DC Back in Black. with a touch of Hanoi Rocks, you know, or something. Whatever. Anyway, whatever.
So the bands that you played in early, were they with rock bands or like was it the hair band era or how?
Yeah, it was pretty. They were pretty much rock bands. We had a hard rock band, you know, and my hair was like down to my waist.
Oh,
and,
wow.
You know, that whole type of thing. And I didn't, you know, we tried doing the makeup thing a little bit, and it was like, yeah, it doesn't, maybe, nah, you know. And so then I remember seeing Red Cross at one point.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, what a cool vibe. So I tried to go more like, you know, retro, you know, with some bells and stuff. And at the time it was kind of late 80s, early 90s was kind of like this crossover time where like, oh, wow, you know, Black Crowes were coming out.
Sure. Yep.
You know, with the London Choir Boys. And there was this kind of resurgence, you know, Lenny Kravitz was, and that's early 90s, you know, Lenny Kravitz was, you know, so I was like, yeah, that's more my vibe. I can do more 70s and
yeah, of course.
And whatever, you know. So it was wild.
Who were you listening to back then?
So here's the funny thing. Like, I had a very schizophrenic listening habit, okay? Because I loved progressive rock.
Oh, wow.
Loved it. But I was playing in a hard rock band because I thought, well, this is going to make it and I'm going to have fun with that. But, you know, I'd go home and listen to Yes Relayer or you're in the Wake Up Poseidon by King Crimson. I had a really weird thing. Like I loved bands like the Mission UK and the Cult and all this stuff. But yeah, I was out on the Sunset Strip playing, you know, where our band kind of sounded like Cinderella. So it was like, you know what I mean? I was listening to everything. I was really, really listening to everything. I just loved music.
Sure.
But I knew like having a career in music was like, okay, well, you got to be in a band and it's got to be a hard rock band, or you got to be in a super pop kind of, you know, band. And I was like, well, okay, cool. Nobody was doing progressive rock, right?
Oh, yeah, not that.
So, but that was like my favorite music, and I was listening to a lot of 70s, like heavy 70s shit. You know? I was really into collecting records at a time when nobody gave a shit about records, you know.
Yep.
You know, so I was listening to everything, man, everything. I mean,
cool.
There I'll say like one of my favorite records was Laura Nyro and Elan the 13th Confession and the Carpenters, A Song for You. And here I am, this 19-year-old with hair down to his waist, you know, like I've been to a lot of places in my life and time, you know. Hey, we got rehearsal in an hour. I'm like, yeah, let's go, you know.
What kind of gear were you playing back then?
Marshall cab. I had, let's see, I first started out with like, I had a Marshall head, and I remember it blew. So then I started using a Carvin, what was it? Carvin,
the X,
those
X100.
yeah, those X100, XB2 or something. I don't know what it was. We know it had like the graphic EQ and all that. And for a while I was using
the one Steve
that.
I used.
Yeah, that's it. That was the one. And so for a while I was using that, and a Marshall cab. And then one day I go into like this place called Blue Guitar, and I saw this high watt, and I'm like, whoa.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what? I go, I gotta have that. And I'm like, I asked the guy, I go, what do you want for that thing? He goes, oh man, nobody wants this. You gotta remember, early 90s, everybody got hot on the dual rectifiers when they came out.
Sure.
5150 head. And I think the Bogner Ecstasy was just starting to make its head, come out, and so it was like high gain amps with master volumes, and I was just like, I was all about, fucking loved Humble Pie. So I was still, my head was still in like 70s realm, because then after all that Sunset stuff, I formed a band it was called Otis Elevator, and it was like Queen. It was Queen. Well, I got it from Cheech and Chong,
Oh, okay.
So if you listen to Cheech and Chong, they go, up next, Otis Elevator. Anyway, I have a fake radio broadcast, and they're talking about Otis Elevator. I'm like, that's the name of our band. So I it was like Yes meets Queen. So I had a great time with that. So I was using vintage gear by that time. I was using high watts, Marshalls. I had a Fender, 59 Bassman.
Oh, wow.
And and it was at a time that, again, there was that kind of retro resurgence. Always played SGs.
No,
for
really?
the most part.
Yeah.
I always played, I had a really, I still have a bunch of black SGs. I don't know, maybe it's the Tony Iommi thing. But I played black SGs, and then I bought my first Les Paul. Well, I think I was 18 when I bought my first Gibson Les Paul Custom, and I still have that guitar,
Wow.
So I was on it, man. I was like doing sessions. I was playing with the cover band, and then I had my original prog rock trio, and so I was working. I was totally working. I was buying gear, working, buying weird pedals, buying this, buying that. And I remember, all this gear started accumulating in the back of my parents' house. And, I remember the first time I bought this, this 59 Bassman, and it was super expensive because it was a vintage thing. And
sure.
My mother was like, "Oh, so what'd you do with all that money that you're making from, gigging?" I'm like, "Oh, I got to show you. I bought a real vintage amp. I had a 59 Bassman, and what a 59. If you have an original 59 Bassman, they look all fucking tattered and torn and totally,
exactly.
the tweed all brown and stains and shit, right? And so I turn on the light. I'm like, "Check it out, Mom." She goes, "You bought that piece of shit for blah blah blah." It was just really funny. It was really funny. But now she's like, she totally gets it. She's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that your guitar is worth this much now."
Yeah.
I got to get that back from you, Mom. It's pretty funny.
That's great.
So,
when you moved to LA, when was your first record that you put out?
When I got signed as far as proper label with distribution and all that stuff.
No, the first this is the first thing you had on vinyl or CD or whatever it was.
Oh God, man. I mean, what was it? I'm trying to think because it wasn't necessarily mine.
Yeah, no, I know, I understand that.
Let me think what that was. It may have been a Shrapnel thing because here's how the connection with Shrapnel was. Okay. Yeah, I was 18. Actually, it was the first thing that I did. Well, let me think about that. That's hard to say. What would it have been? Because people were, mainly people were making remember the not demo tapes, but people would make a cassette tape.
Sure,
and they would have 4 songs on one side, 4 songs on the other. So
yeah.
I think what was it? I'm thinking. 1 second.
No problem.
God, that's hard to say. Oh no, it may have been the Marionette. I had a band called Marionette, and it was hard rock.
Okay.
And so that was the very first thing, I was in high school, 90. So that must have been 90 or 91. We had just basic stuff. Like most bands they would put out.
Yeah.
That would be the very first thing I think that I had done that was of my own.
Was that in LA or was that back in Tucson?
No, that was in San Diego.
Oh, in San Diego. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In Tucson, man, I was just part of a couple of silly bands, and you put out a tape that you dub on your own from a double cassette recorder, and you put a sticker on it. And,
yeah, of course.
And you cartoon draw the band. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, good.
That's great.
And then after that, I mean, I was always doing some kind of recording for somebody. I was doing a lot of demo stuff for people. I was doing, local band or local artist that's like, I need a guitar player to do this Dave Gilmour tribute thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. I need a band, Horrible Pop. Oh, we need to do this thing for Family Fitness commercials. Oh, okay, I'll do that. I mean, I just got busy. It just started having fun. Most of my friends got a job at, a restaurant or at a music store. And I was like, gratefully and I mean this, I was really grateful that I was like, wow, I'm making money playing music. This is awesome. And I love music and I love gear. I'm going to keep putting it into gear, So yeah, I just stayed busy. And then I met a friend of mine, Kelly Keeling. He brought me in on this project, and it was done by Shrapnel. Okay. And that was the first time I was like, I had got a check from a record label. Wow. And it said Shrapnel, Luis Maldonado for this amount of money. And I was like, whoa, cool. And all I did was help him engineer his vocals on it, and so I have this record. That was the first label thing that I had done. And wow. A few years later that I met Mike, and it's all kind of all connected. It's all connected, man.
It is all connected.
Yeah. So yeah.
What brought you when you moved up to Northern California? What brought you up here?
The hate of LA.
Oh, okay.
Because at the time, a lot of people talk about, oh man, it's great. What a scene. In fact, I was talking to Rick from Celestion about this, and we were like, reminiscing about, oh my God, what a scene it was, and how, you'd walk down Sunset Strip and it was totally packed with people and hair and girls and all, and you're like, wow, but when that wasn't happening on a Saturday, Friday, or whatever night, most of the time, I mean, I don't know if you had been down in LA around that time, late 80s and early 90s, it was a dump, man. It was just a dirty city.
Oh,
it was just a dirty city.
Yep.
And my best friend, Chris Butcher, had an apartment, and I'd stay with him. And, there was a time when you're really young where you're like, you sleep on the floor and you sleep on the couch and kind of, all right, who's taking the couch tonight? That shit. And I was just like, really? This is what it is. This is what it, what it takes. And I was just like, no. And I was more a fan of the love of the song. Yeah. And I think I had woke up one day and I'm like, nobody here writes great songs. There's no real great scene in LA. Like there's no songs that have depth. It's mainly about, you get the right kind of pants, Les Paul, a Marshall, you do whatever with your hair. And then, also, it was right before the grunge thing took off. Mm-hmm. And then grunge came in, killed all that, and then every band wanted to be a hard band, like a hardcore band or a grunge band. And I was like, I'm so not into following scenes. I don't want to follow a sound because it was a definitive sound. Like the bands that were doing it, obviously they became huge because they were being original. They weren't copying Faster Pussycat. They were like, listen to that first sentence, like that Loud Love album by Soundgarden. You're going, holy shit, this is rock and roll. Yeah. But then they had to call it grunge. But it was rock and roll. And I was like, okay, I want to follow songs. I don't want to follow a scene anymore. Yeah. And I did the total antithesis of what most people would do. I left LA and I went to San Francisco. And everything, I felt like going to San Francisco was the best move I made in my life because then I met guys like Mike, and then I met other people, and then I started kind of building my career there. And I had a wonderful time in San Francisco, and everybody I met was super creative. Yeah. They were great songwriters. They were great musicians. People were doing music for music. And I was like, this is where I want to be. And, I developed as a songwriter. I developed as a player. Yeah. Like I really found myself as a musician in San Francisco. So, it just kind of called me, honestly. So,
were you playing in bands up here?
Not so much. I mean, I'd play with a few. It would be like artists like, I got one for you. So do you know Dean Del Rey?
Of course.
Okay, so I was Dean Del Rey's, I was in Dean Del Rey's band, along with Jim Bogus and and Ronnie Crawford and a bunch of other people, So I played with Dean for years.
Oh, really?
Up there.
Cool.
Yeah, and then I played with this. There was a guy named Austin Willisey. He was like, he was in the House Jacks, which was a at the time a fairly prominent a cappella group. And he had his own solo project. And it was on an indie, so that was cool. I played with him, and I was trying to get my own thing going. So, from playing with guys locally or girls locally, I really was trying to get my own group together. Sure. And fairly soon after that, I met a guy. I met Tim Alexander from Primus, the drummer, and I met a few other guys like Jeff Perlman. He was a great songwriter here. He was working with remember Stormman or Dirty Mouth?
No.
They were pretty, they're a prominent band in San Francisco in the 90s at that time. So I had met him, and through him I had met John Evans, who, was a bassist for Tori Amos.
Oh, wow.
And then so I would do these shared bills with Jeff, and then I'd have a trio with John Evans and Tim Alexander, and I was trying to get my own band going together, and then not long after I got my own stuff together, I was still doing sessions for Mike. Yeah. And then somehow I got involved in working with Michael Schenker.
Wow.
For his solo record, doing some stuff, and then I started working with Phil Mogg and Pete Way on their solo stuff.
Wow.
And you know, some of it was just basic stuff. Like I'll do like rhythm guitars, a lot of background vocals with my friend Jesse Bradman, and sometimes engineering. You know, it was really interesting, man. It was really an interesting time. And then from there, you know, I got recommended to tour with those guys. For some reason or another, Paul Raymond didn't do the tour, so I ended up touring with UFO.
Wow.
Yeah, so stuff like that was happening. I toured with them just for that one album cycle, that one tour in Europe, and then it just, from there, it started moving forward, and you know, I eventually moved to LA. Well, I had a brief stint in San Diego, but I moved to LA, and then, you know, the rest is kind of like, you know, I did everything that I could, because I was like, well, you know, I've got some experience. I've got recording experience. I've got, you know, some legacy experience. I've got blah, blah, blah. I'm a writer. I'm a this, I'm a that, and a singer. And, you know, something should happen for me. Well, nothing came quick. It really, I had to start over when I got to LA, and I started doing every Tuesday night and Thursday night and Friday night and Sunday night, you know, like, you know, Tuesday with Buck Johnson at Harvell's, and
wow.
every Tuesday, or blah, 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 you know, just stuff like that, coffee shop gigs, this and that. I played with my friend Jeff because he moved down to LA. So it was just this constant, I went for it, man. I was fucking relentless. I just went for it, didn't stop. And dude, I mean, honestly, within about, I'd say a couple years, things just opened up. They just, boom, everything started opening up. I ended up doing a showcase for my own material for like 11 labels.
Oh, wow.
You know, over at Swing House, and, you know, and this was with, you know, the project that I started in San Francisco. And the funny thing is, like I said, most people in San Francisco either went to Portland or LA. And all my friends were in LA, so I was very happy about that.
Good.
And so I did that, and then I started playing with this Warner Brothers artist. Her name was Holly Palmer, and that was fun. And then, you know, again, working with some other independent local people. And then I got, you know, I met John Waite through Buck Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Who was his keyboard player at the time, and I was in Buck's band.
Oh, wow.
You see what I mean? It was all kind of like very organic and related. And then one day he goes, "Hey, man, I need you for a gig." And I went and did the gig, and the rest was history. I ended up playing for John Waite for 8 years.
Wow.
But you know, I still did a bunch of stuff while I was with John. I ended up playing with, like, you know, Glenn Hughes. I ended up playing with, you know, another pop artist that was on Columbia Records. And, you know, it was crazy, man. I was relentless. I just kept going and going. I'd go do sessions. I ended up getting my own record deal at one point, and formed a band, you know. So, yeah, it was wild. You know, as soon as I kind of gave myself to the life of what this is as a musician, and I just worked and kept going and kept working and kept learning, you know, kept adapting, kept learning.
Sure.
You know.
Well, and what was it like working with John Waite? What, are you guys still friends?
Dude, I just worked with him in November. He reached out to me. Well, I'd send him, you know, a few messages here and there, like, "Dude, how you doing? Hope all is well." You know, there'd be, like, you know, some communication and whatnot. And then he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, man, what are you doing next week?" And, you know, I recorded some acoustic tracks for his, you know, he has this anthology out right now that he just released. I think it's called, what was it called? Wooden Heart? Okay. Is that what it was? Let me remember, because I don't, you know, have horrible time remember, but it's an anthology of just all his songs done in an acoustic way. It's pretty killer. Some of the stuff on there, I'm on it. And then he's got, you know, it's just a big old collection of great songs. So I did that in November, and, you know, and we're friendly. I you know, we text here and there, and you know, his birthday was on July 4th. I was like, "Hey, dude, happy birthday," you know. So I stay in touch with him. As far as working with him, I had a blast. How can I say this? His set list was probably one of the most rocking and great songs. Oh yeah, of course. You know, all those baby songs and his songs. His songs, Bad English Babies, all of it. Just he's got such an in-depth and rich history of songs. Even his solo stuff after all that stuff is pretty amazing. Oh, if you listen to, you know, Suicide Life or like New York City Girl or Hard Way. There's a bunch of great songs that that he still has and he still writes. And so being with him was like, for me, just awesome, because I was like, I loved the songs. I was there as a sponge trying to incorporate all that, become all that as well. And as a player, it's phenomenal. You're playing all these great pieces. And,
exactly.
Yeah. And then at one point we didn't have a keyboard player, and then we went from doing a 2-guitar thing to then just me. And so I did all the keyboard parts on the guitar, like, when you do like Isn't It Time, like we would do stuff like that. And so as a player, it was challenging, but also very rewarding. It was a rock show, man. And I got to say, in my whole career, it's been about 27 years now.
Wow.
I still miss the set. And, sometimes I'm like, I have an acoustic guitar, or I'm playing my electric, and I'll pull out those songs and I'll still play them. And, I loved my time with him. It was really I had a great time with him, and I always cherish those moments.
No, of course.
No, it was fun. He's a good dude. Yeah.
What about Phil Mogg? What was it like working with him?
With Phil was cool. Phil, Englishman, and he had a very a dry and witty humor, and was always really kind to me. Always a good dude. When I did do that one tour with them, he was into riling you up before you get on stage, and he just, he would say stuff to really get your, just to get you in the zone. Like, what are you going to do when the lights all, when that one spotlight hits you and everything else is dark and you have to start Love to Love. Like, he tried to like psych you out. He loved psyching you out. And it was, so I kind of got like that not almost like a big brother bullying thing, but done in love, and he was cool. He really kind dude. And so I did that one tour, and then it seemed like for years after that, I would run into him at like the House of Blues, because UFO was playing the day before, and I was with another artist, the day after, and I'd just run into him in all these places, cool. In the United States, and he'd call me Louis, how are you? And so we'd catch up, and I think the last time I saw him was when. That's right. Okay, so the last time I saw him was when the Key Club was still around in L.A., which was, obviously it's been years. Yeah. It's been, several years since that's happened. And that was the last time I saw him. And my life has definitely kind of, shot so far into a whole other scene that I've just been busy doing that. I'm a father too. And so, lives go this way and that way. But, every time I saw him, he was a really sweet guy to me. Most people have been really cool to me. I will say I don't have I have some horror stories, but I don't have many.
Oh, good.
I don't have many. I can look back in my career and go, wow, man, I've had a really good run. I've had some cool people that I've worked with, and they've been cool to me.
Yeah.
Those that haven't and been weird, I don't miss them, and they're not doing anything anyway. So I'm good.
How did you get hooked up with Train and Pat?
So the way I got hooked up with Train is I was with this artist that was on Columbia Records, and she was opening up for the band, and this was like around 2006. Oh no, sorry. Her name was Anna Nalick.
Okay.
And so we were opening up. I was part of her group, and we were opening up for Train in like the summer of 2006, 2005. I can't quite remember, honestly. 5, 6, one of those. And I met all the guys,
sure.
and it was a cool tour. And so Anna never did sound check.
Oh, okay.
So it was the sound check consisted of me singing, playing guitar, the bass player, and the drummer. And so we'd go out, and instead of doing, we'd line check all the stuff, and then we had like 20 minutes to kill, and I'm like, let's just play a bunch of songs and I'll sing them, and and so we would do Humble Pie songs, we would do Zeppelin songs, and so that was every sound check, and that was the thing, and crews would come out and check it out, because it was hearing those songs blasting live through a big PA at a big venue, you know, and someone that can sing the stuff and play the stuff, you know. It was you know, it was fun. And so we would always do sound checks, and then one sound check, I think we were doing Heartbreaker. You know, I did all the solo, I sang the whole thing and all that, and we finished, and we're like, all right, guys, we got to get off. And I turn around, and Pat's standing right behind my amps. And he goes, dude, where'd you come from? And that kind of started a conversation, and we talked for a while. I kind of gave him my background, and you know, he invited me to write songs for a solo record because he was working on a solo record. Okay, cool. And from there, it kind of just, you know, we developed a relationship. I toured. I recorded on his solo record. I toured his solo record. I wrote on his solo record, you know, all that. And then, you know, I stayed involved, you know, as you know, a writer, and I'd do, like, you know, when he had these, you know, like specific events or private shows or corporate shows, you know, I'd go do them with him. You know, he always invited me as his guitar player to go do them with him. And, you know, I was able to write, you know, I wrote, I had a song that I wrote with him that got placed on the Save Me San Francisco record, which kind of brought them back with Soul Sister and all that stuff. Sure. And so I stayed connected the whole time. Meanwhile, I had my own record label, you know, my own record deal going on, and had my own band with my wife. She was, you know, she's a cellist. Okay. And you know, had Tim Alexander on drums, and you know, we revolved like this intense revolving door of bassists. I like to sometimes, you know, make fun and say, you know, like Spinal Tap had the exploding drummer thing. We had the exploding bass player thing, which they could just vanish. So I had my own band, and then I was working with Glenn, and I was working with John, and so I kept, you know, I stayed busy, and then, you know, Pat was one of those guys that I worked with in my years, and you know, and I'd still do sessions, and I'd still do writing sessions, and you know, but I stayed involved several years until, you know, Jimmy, the founding guitarist and member, had decided he wanted to, you know, I think he was having his third kid, and I think he was just, man, I want to get off the road, you know, and I don't think he wanted to be it because the band worked a lot. Sure. And I don't think I think he was just like, I'm good. And he just had a different focus, which is totally, you know, I get it. Yeah. And so I know that when that happened, you know, I got the call, you know, just because I was always involved. You know, my brother played bass in the band. And, wow. Yeah, so I was always involved in some way or another, and I know that Jimmy had made the recommendation, and I know Pat had told me that, you know, had told me that that's what he wanted as well. So then we were doing a Christmas record, and then he just, like, literally on a break, he's like, you know, how busy are you this summer? And I was like, well, I'm busy because I have to be. Yeah. But why? He goes, well, I need you to join. And then the rest was history. I was there for almost 5 years. Wow. Yeah, I was there as a full-time guitarist. I was there for about almost 5 years. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So, but I had been involved with them for many, many years. Yeah, for a long time. You know, my brother still plays bass with them, and you know.
Are they still pretty active?
Who was trained? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think they've got. You know, obviously nobody did anything during COVID, but you know, I got to give it to those guys because they put out a series of you know, kind of like videos, YouTube videos, you know, doing acoustic versions of the songs, and you know, we did that, and I was there, and you know, and while that, you know, I would still do these, you know, kind of remote events, if I can say, and Zoom events with those guys during the COVID year, and so you know, I still worked. So I give it to them for you know, continuing to do that. And now they have a tour. I think they've got, I don't know, something like 20 dates or something right now that they're going to do in August and September maybe. Oh, wow. So, yeah, so they're still doing stuff. Yeah, who's playing guitar with them now? Man, I don't know. I don't know. And it has nothing to do with anything except that, like, you know, as soon as, you know, I got the call from Foreigner, and and they, just kind of invited me to go play, and it's been like nonstop. I mean, really, it's been just immersing myself in the catalog, and I've become really, really, getting really more and more ingrained in the whole camp, in the whole Foreigner family, and it really is a wonderful brotherhood. I mean, I have not experienced anything like it, honestly. I mean, bro, you go work for a band, or you go work for a corporation, or you go, or you work at a small salon or whatever. And, you get along with people. It's it's the human thing to do. You get along with people, you do the right thing, you keep your environment peaceful. And then when you go home, you've got your own friends, you've got your own life, you've got your own thing, right?
You got kids and everything else.
Right. And that's really kind of the same thing with, if you're a musician. It doesn't, if you're in a band with some people, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're best friends with everybody. You're friendly, and you're cool, and you're respectful, and you do your work, and you try to keep the peace, and all good. But when you get home, you're like, oh, cool. I'm not at, and you go, I'm not at work. All this to say, I've never really experienced a group of guys that are really, like, 'cause I'm watching it and I'm experiencing it, and obviously I'm new to the band, but these guys are really they're like brothers. They really care about each other. Well, brothers in the best way, because I know what it's like to have brothers in the worst way. No, I'm kidding. You know what I mean? But like they're brothers in the best way, where like they really care. Hey man, you need a water? I got you. Even simple gestures of, hey, we're all going to get together and have dinner, and everybody gets together and has dinner, and this is on the time off, and they really are, Phil, manager, goes, you won't find a closer, stronger band of brothers in this industry like these guys. These guys really care about each other and care about the music, and they care about having a great environment, and they're very meticulous about keeping it great. And he was right, because since I joined, it's been nothing but just, people are respectful, people are kind, people are mindful, and people are mindful that, like, you may have needs. What do you need to do for sound check? All right, well, let's spend half an hour on your ears alone. And like, really? You mean I'm not, really? I'll try to hurry. No. This is not about hurrying. This is about doing it right.
Getting it right,
and oh, dude, I was like, whoa, I can't believe it. They care. But they're really about doing it right, and that right there, I respect fully. Because it's always about doing it right. Doing it fast or getting through it, or like hurry up. Like, fuck all that, man. I'm here to do it right too. Like, let me be the best of who I am, and give me the time to do it right. So all good. But no, it's been wonderful. These guys are really cool, man. Super cool.
Are you guys touring with other bands?
No.
No, it's just you guys,
dude. So we started in May, right, and we've done two small runs so far, like one in May and one in June, and I leave on Tuesday to start the bulk tour,
and the racing capital of the world.
Yeah, that's right. and there has been no openers, and so far every show has been really well. Like, I know some have been sold out, and some have been extremely well attended, and it's been amazing. People want to see live music, and and then look, let's be honest, a band like Foreigner is on a short list of bands that have an incredible amount of songs. Well, some bands have one song, or they have two songs, or maybe they have four, or maybe they have four. Great. And I'm saying this just experiencing it right now. They have like 19 of those. I'm going.
They have more than they can play more than you can play in a night.
Oh my God, dude! It's it's easily a 100-minute show. And these guys, look, and I'm saying this, and I'm trying to say this as objective as possible, because I've been on all sides. Okay, I have experience enough. Many tour years experience with different artists. I mean, dude, we saw each other when I was playing with Lisa Marie Presley. Okay,
exactly.
So I've gone from doing super pop to heavy stuff to rock stuff to like eclectic things like Lisa Marie and heavy heavy music, like I was a member of Big Elf, and I did that, So I have a pretty wide range of my experience of what, from touring, people, psychologies, music, how managements work, how corporate, how the brands are run, how businesses run. Just exactly. I've got it. I've got all that information.
Emphasis is on psychology.
Yeah, and I've got all that experience, right? And so far, being with this band is a whole different level. It's a whole different level, and I'm just, and I'm trying to be like I said, I'm trying to be as objective in talking about it, so that I'm not hyping anything out. But I am going to say that they're definitely on a short list of like again, the amount of songs that they have. Yeah. Is incredible. Sure. These guys don't run tracks. Now, I've played with bands that run like 80 tracks for whatever reason they need to run, whatever it is. That's cool. You can do that. And some people do. That's totally fine. But these guys don't run any tracks. All the vocals are live. All the music is live. And they're playing tight, effective, authoritative, and it's rock, and it's big, and the songs are being given justice. Every musician in the band has got a wealth of experience and expertise in their craft, whether it's Chris on drums or whoever, they're all really great musicians. They're all, it's Kelly's a phenomenal singer.
Oh, absolutely.
Delivers every night. And not only that, but it's high energy. So I'm trying to keep up with the amount of running around and movement that these guys are doing. I'm going, wait, I've got to start going to that side and this side and jump onto this and blah, blah. And so it's wild. It's a whole different level for me. And it's been challenging me in so many ways. So I'm still learning. It's still all cool. It's all new to me, and new in the sense of this particular band of brothers, but it's a whole different league. Again, they're on the short list of people that can do stuff and that have the songs that they do with the trajectory that they have. And we were, me and my friend Damon Fox, who is Big Elf, and he's one of my best friends, and we were talking about it the other day. And what bands out there could do this? What bands out there that still have a legacy in the amount of songs? And we were like, obviously Foreigner was one, Journey was another one, or Heart, bands that could still go to have a potent catalog and a potent live show. Yeah. Not short list, man. So I'm super stoked and grateful, and I get to play Marshalls really loud, so that's cool.
Have you had the opportunity to play with Mick yet?
Yes, we did a CNN and a Fox thing. I know opposing sides, whatever. Fuck all that. Who cares? Fuck all that. So we did two TV performances, and man, he's one of the sweetest guys. I mean, when I was first jamming with the group, I had this wonderful long conversation with him, and man, what a sweet guy. And I remember, he says, we're willing to commit to you if you're willing to commit to us. And I'm wow, what a thing to say. He was just, and there's nothing there but just a good dude, know. Yep. No pretense, no bullshit. No, I know more than you. And you're just a really great dude and so kind. And he's going to be, he'll be on this run for some, we have some shows that are with the orchestra.
Oh, wow.
Right? So it's Foreigner with orchestra. Man, me too. I'm going, oh, wow, because I haven't experienced it yet. But, I will on this run. So, damn. So I know I'll be seeing him, soonish. Yeah. But yeah, it's wild, man.
Who arranges for the orchestra?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I was gonna default to maybe it's Jeff, but I honestly don't know. I don't know. There's so many things.
Do it.
Absolutely. Well, I think he does have a hand in it. I just don't know who does the actual, scoring and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't know. There's still some things I don't know, and some things I'm learning.
Yeah. And what are you taking along as far as guitars?
Pretty much Gibsons.
Oh, right
pretty much Gibsons. I've always been a Gibson dude.
Do you know Cesar from the Cesar.
Yeah. Cesar and JC.
Yes, exactly.
The new
team.
The new team, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've met him a few times.
Oh, good.
And the funny thing is, I met JC at a train show a couple years back with his brother.
Oh, wow.
And some of his friends, and they came back and we hung out. And this is before he became.
Yeah, when he was still at Levi's.
When he was still at Levi's, and man, they've got a lot of energy, really cool.
Oh, yeah.
And so then when they came on, and they had this kind of like, mixer for Gibson artists, and I went to it, and I ran into him. I'm like, dude. He's like, dude. It was pretty funny. It was really funny. So yeah, and they have the right mindset for it. I'm actually appreciate what they've been doing.
Oh yeah,
a lot in the last couple of years, that they've been really turning many things around. Because if you were it's different.
Yeah.
It's totally different. They're very, very cool. There's a few people that I've become close to in the Gibson, in the Gibson family, and they've been wonderful to me. Yeah. They, do you need anything? I'm like, man, I've got a lot of Gibson guitars. I'm good. But just the fact that they would ask is cool. I don't normally call them up and go, hey, can you send me a custom shop Pelham SG? I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I over the years, I've acquired a good stable of Gibsons that have become my workhorses, and
sure.
I leave it at that.
How many guitars do you have?
On this tour or in general?
We'll start with the tour, and then we'll go to it in general. Like, do you have a collection, so to speak?
Well, I would say there's there's an A and B rig, which is fairly common.
Yeah.
One's the West Coast rig and one's the East Coast rig.
Okay.
And so there's a total of 8 guitars, and they're all for the most part, they're all Gibsons. I mean, I have a couple of weirdo Gibson style guitars. Like I have a Greco, right?
Okay, of course.
It's so killer. It's such a killer. So I have a Greco. It's like a Firebird, from the 70s.
Excellent.
And then like I've got anyway, stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Not much, just like a couple of one-offs, but most of it is like I've got 2 black Gibson SGs. I've got a couple of Les Pauls. I've got another Firebird.
Yeah.
I've got an Explorer. I've got a Flying V.
Oh, great.
So rock and roll guitars. I've got the classic rock and roll guitars, and so there's about, I think 8. There's about 8 total.
Between the 2 rigs, or 8 on each rig?
No. Between the 2 rigs.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really get too crazy with like I think I'll use the Telly on this one.
Yeah.
I'm kind of I'm like I'm very traditional in the sense where like you see Angus with one black SG, or you see Tony Iommi with one black SG, or you see Jimmy Page. You see Jimmy Page pretty much with just that Les Paul and maybe that Dan Electro. But so I'm kind of that guy. I get attached to the one main one, and then the other ones are for like, oh, okay, this is drop D. All right, give me the Flying V.
Yeah.
Or oh, this one's in standard tuning. Give me the SG, or whatever, or but most of the time it's going to be like a Les Paul and a Firebird for the most part.
Yeah.
So,
right on.
Yeah, so that's what I'm using, and then I've got a whole bunch of other Gibsons here at the house, and that's it.
Anything vintage, so to speak.
I was into starting to buy vintage for a while, right? And and certainly there's guys that tour with vintage, like I don't know if you know Stuart Mathis. He's a friend, and I remember we did a tour. I was in a group where we were opening up for a group that he was in. Man, he'd be touring with 60s SGs and a bunch of killer stuff. And I remember I started buying stuff like 70s stuff, late 60s stuff, mainly Gibson stuff. And I had this one SG that it took a little hit. It didn't break anything, but it took a little hit. And I remember going in my head, it made this switch going, why the fuck do I have this out here? like I don't need this to get broken. So I and then, you know, most people would disagree with this, but I didn't have that, like, you know, the vintage guitars control me thing.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yep.
oh, it's a good investment. It's like, I didn't have that because I just didn't. So I ended up selling whatever vintage guitars I had.
Wow.
And I put them into really well-made VOS or used guitars that were just like, okay, this is phenomenally made. It sounds great. The neck is right. It won't shift.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was looking into like functionality and tone
Sure.
over like, you know, oh, look at the weather checking on this cherry finish for this Les Paul Jr. I didn't give a shit about that.
Oh,
I didn't give a shit. I cared more about the tone and the functionality and whether the neck was going to withstand temperature change and
Sure.
and
Sure.
travel
Touring.
and so
Yeah.
touring. And so I spent all my money on trying to get the best of the best touring guitars, and I did. I have a great stable of guitars that they're solid and you know, I bought a few custom guitars from a couple of custom builders, and you know, and I won't mention them, but like, sadly, they sucked. They didn't they did not handle the touring well. They didn't handle the road well, or they just had weird shit that would pop up. I'm going, yeah, okay, I'll go back to Gibsons. And so far, all my Gibsons have been extremely sturdy. You know, of course, I you know, handpicked, and you know, I'd be in like Cleveland, and I went to like Mike's or something, or I, you know, went to Dave's in Seattle, or I went to like, you know, Elderly, and you know, I go to different shops, and I'm like, oh, this is a okay, you know, this is a really well-made custom shop, and you see, and cool. All right, I'll take this one. Like, I didn't have a problem spending the money to get a like great guitar, but I also wasn't, you know, I wasn't opposed to getting a vintage thing, but most of the time I was like, man, if I take this 20 grand, this Les Paul Jr. that I bought for 20 grand on the tour, and for some reason
it falls off a stand.
That falls off a stand, or something in the vault, you know, was done too tight on the neck, which has happened, by the way. I've had a friend that, like, you know, somebody tightened the straps, you know, when you have these guitar vaults and they're all standing up, right? Yeah. He had an amazing VOS custom shop Les Paul, and somebody tightened the strap too much and snapped the neck. Oh no! When it was being put on the truck. Oh, you know, these things are still being jostled around. So sure. You know, what are you going to do? So I just looked at, like, you know, I don't want to sound clinical, but again, function and tonality, because if it was going to sound great, right on. That's it. I'm more about the sound. You know. Yeah. You can always burn the finish with the blowtorch and the lighter, you know, or whatever. You know, oh, it looks so cool. It's old. Like, no, it's not. It's just dirty.
Have you ever bought a guitar from Mike Varney? I know he's
bought a new guitar from Mike Varney.
Well, just bought a guitar from Varney. I think he's got quite a collection.
Oh my God! So yes, actually, I remember he offered me a Les Paul. This was what, in late '90s. Oh really? He offered me this really, like, wonderful Les Paul standard cherry finish, and it sounded amazing. I was like, yeah, and I bought a guitar off him like that. But you know, he you know, yeah, I did. I bought a Les Paul off him one time. Yeah, all right, yeah. And it was a great Les Paul too. Yeah. Sure. So yeah.
What about pedals? Are you using any kind of pedals?
You know, I feel the same about pedals. I don't like a lot. Right on. Even okay. So the most I ever used was, and you're gonna laugh, because the most I ever used was when I was with Big Elf and Train. Okay. And the number of pedals for Big Elf was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, it wasn't a lot. It was just, you know, it was again, like, you know, phaser flanger into a tube boost, into a wah, into a valve clipper, into a reverb, and then a tape delay. So, you know, that's it. I didn't have tremolos. I didn't have gonkulators. I didn't have all this shit. You know, I've always liked a really simple setup. Always liked it. I was always a fan of the sound of guitar cable amp. Mm-hmm. And every single time I can feel and notice when you have a tuner in it. It just doesn't. There's a thing. There's a thing, and I have a sensitivity to that thing. So I tried to use the least amount of stuff. However, some stuff made it forgivable. Like, for instance, I have tape delays, and fucking love a tape delay. And the way the tape delay sounds is unlike and feels, and the dimension of it is different than, not to say the digital delay isn't bad. I mean, they have some cool ones. But, when you first plug into a tape delay and you're playing through a Marshall and you have a Les Paul, you feel like Peter Frampton. And you're like, fuck yeah, man. So there are some things that will go in the chain forgivable, or my first script Phase 90, or my Roland Phase 5, shit like that, So with Big Elf, I use mainly kind of like just, more vintagey kind of things.
Sure.
And then for Train, I had a the full-on rack attached to 3 Marshall head things. But what I had in the rack was all the stuff there was like, reverb delay, phaser, univibe, a tube boost, and a Leslie effect or something like that. And you could get a lot of sounds out of just the simple stuff.
Sure.
If you know how to use it, and you're pretty good with a volume pedal.
Yeah.
And I had a GCX, one of those GCX switchers, from Voodoo Labs, and that was great because I was able to go from like, washed out, jangly, the Edge style guitar to rock guitar for the chorus to jingly jangly, Americana sound from amp number 2, So I loved that. That was probably the most elaborate setup that I had, and it sure was fun. But with pop music, you kind of have to, because the way pop music is these days, it's so, it's done in sections and chunks and pieced together like a puzzle rather than than real time playing, real time organic. I'm pressing this tremolo or so it's different. So you kind of have to learn how to play to the puzzle piece that they put together, and so a lot of your sounds are going to be like bank up 1, preset 2, and it's a lot of that, and I found myself doing that quite a bit with the Train stuff, but these days with John it was really simple. I had 3 pedals. With Glenn I think I had 4. With Foreigner I have 3. It really, really straightforward. I believe if the tone is right, if the tone is really like just fucking slamming tone, it's more than enough.
Oh yeah.
Because that sound you could just go, yeah, man, and the rest is just little bits here and there. And I'm not knocking people that have 20 pedals on their pedal board, but that's not for me. And also I'm not playing a music that requires 20 pedals on a pedal board. So I don't know what music that is, but you can have it. It's all good. No, I'm just being funny. I'm being funny.
Right on.
Anyway.
So, and what do you do for like outside of music? What are you doing? Like, what do you do for fun? You have kids, obviously.
I have a 7.5-year-old daughter who keeps me on my toes. So if you ask me, what do I do, when I'm not on the road? Dad.
Oh, okay.
I am dad. I'm dad full time. I am married. I have a really good home life.
Great.
My home life is super solid. It is the top of the pyramid. It is, if I mainly concentrate more about my family life than I do my career or anything else. And the day I made that switch is the best because everything else has to follow that.
Yeah.
So if I make any decisions in my life or in my career, it's because it has to follow how that's growing or how that's shifting. And that's what I've done. And it's worked out really tremendously. And I have never looked back. I mean, I'm super, this is it, man. This is my life. Like, music life is one thing and your career is one thing, but honestly, like, this is really my life. My life is my family.
Oh, sure.
I'm super happy here. I laugh here at home. and so it makes everything else, are we painting the hallway a different color? Shit, I tried to grow grass, but where did these weeds come from? I'm the pool man, I'm all that stuff, but happily so. As far as that, anything else, and I'll try to see my friends that I love very much and, and have a food or coffee or whatever. But I'm kind of a homebody, honestly. I try to stay nearby at home. Yeah. Hey man, we're playing the whiskey. I'm like, yeah, cool. What time do you guys play? 11. Good luck. Those days are gone for me. Not because I don't want to go, but I just,
Yeah. Cause
my wife would differ. She's like, oh, come on, we got to have a social life. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm forced to have a social life by constantly traveling.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Constantly forced to be around people, constantly, and not. Sorry, that sounds horrible. Not forced to be around people. I am around people all the time.
Yeah.
And not just with the guys in the band or the crew or whatever, but just around. Just you go to the airport, you're around thousands of people, and so when you come home, you're like, oh, it's quiet. It's quiet. Hey, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, man. I guess I'm to the rest of the world probably boring. I don't go ride horses or motorcycles. I don't collect baseball cards, and I do have this thing where I do collect. Well, actually, I stopped collecting records because I feel like I'm done. I do collect 45s mainly for my daughter. I still have a gear thing, and mainly my gear thing is to find really, stuff that no one else has, man. Like I've got a Coron Space Machine 70. What's that? Exactly. I've got a couple of valve clippers. I've been really into tube-based stuff, like the tube drive stuff from Effectrode, like a tube vibe, a tube, stuff like that, the Kingsley stuff. Some old weird stuff like a psychedelic machine, and the Roland Bebon, and again the phaser, Phase 5 and Phase 2s. I love the phaser. I'm a big phaser fan. Neutron phasers, mainly the Phase 1, not so much the Phase 2, but stuff like that. And then weird, just anything that's like, there isn't many of these, is there? Give me both. Like I've got I even have some rack stuff like the high watt, the rack mount preamp that not a lot of people know about. It was from the Series 2000 stuff. Yeah, I've got one of those. It was a Frank Levy mod. If you know anything about Frank Levy, he was instrumental in many of the SIR Marshalls that have tons of myth and legend. And he's done a lot of amps for so many people. My friend Bobby at RJS Amps, if you ever heard of his amps. I've got some of his stuff too. And, he was friends with Frank before, he passed, and, he knows about all that stuff. And, so stuff like that. What else? I don't know. I get the weirder, wackier, if it sounds like it's some weird modulation on that's about to be sick, I'm into it,
Right on.
or in space, or if it sounds something that would be on a space rock record from the 70s, I'm in.
That's great. Well, I think I've taken enough of your time there.
Yeah, man. I mean, I could keep going, believe me.
I'm sorry I couldn't get to Fresno. That would have been a blast.
Dude, listen. If there's, I know that we're gonna be doing Saratoga.
Oh, okay.
So we're doing Saratoga, and I think we're going to be doing. I mean, there's there's some stuff. If you see that there's something on the schedule or whatever, and it's nearby, dude, just call me.
All right.
You just give me a call and go, dude, I'm around. I'm like, cool. I'll see you for dinner.
All right. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. Yep.
That's great. So let me let you go.
Cool, brother.
Very good. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you, Luis.
Dude, thanks for letting me gab. I'm sure,
I loved it.
I've had enough coffee, so I was ready.
Good for you.
Yeah. All right, brother. Hey, stay in touch, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, brother.
Thank you, Luis.
You got it.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Have Guitar Will Travel. You can catch up on all the things I'm doing at thedeadlies.com. And I'm on all the social media platforms as well. And please support Vintage Guitar and all the wonderful things they do, because they do many, many wonderful things for us guitar players. Thanks. Please subscribe. Please tell a friend. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.